Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the Pandaemonium fight P2S Hippocampus. This is the second Savage fight in the Pandaemonium raid series in Final Fantasy XIV. We're going to break down all of the major mechanics that occur in this fight in order with a couple of strats for how you could solve them. So let's begin. Before the fight starts, you want us to assign light parties. That's 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS, and it would also not hurt you to have slide positions assigned for the first one. You can just wing these as you go along, but my group has tanks and healers targeting one corner, while DPS target the other with their slides. Anyways, let's go over the mechanics. First up is Murky Depths. This is just a raid-wide. Light mitigation should be enough. Doubled Impact is a shared tank buster. Tanks can both take it with cooldowns together, or one can take it with an invuln. Sewage Deluge is a much harder hitting raid-wide. This will require mitigation in week 1 gear, or you will die. Make sure you mitigate as the stage transitions. Just like in normal mode, you need to be on the grating, otherwise everywhere else is deadly. And similarly, the square in the bottom right corner, that B square, there's going to be a random square marked off as inaccessible. If at any point in time you try to walk through that, that will similarly instantly kill you. So, the first mechanic we get up is Cataract. The boss and the head face different directions, and you either get Spoken Cataract or Winged Cataract cast. Now, for either Cataract cast, the body is going to do the same thing, which is align AoE in the direction that it's facing. The face does something differently depending on the name of the cast. So if the cast is called Spoken Cataract, then the face is going to cleave in front of it, and therefore you want to hide in a quarter behind it. If instead the cast is Winged Cataract, the face is going to cleave behind it, and therefore you want to be in a corner in front of it. Next up is Coherence. Random player gets a tether, which can be picked up by a tank. That tank wants to take that as far away from the party as possible. Another player is going to get a line stack AoE, and whoever gets hit by that first is going to take more damage, so we want that to be a tank in front of the party. Position like so, and you should be fine, good to go. There's another Murky Depths raid-wide, and then Ominous Bubbling is going to target each of the healers with a stack marker. This means we have to break into our light parties that we assigned earlier. During this, the boss is going to target a corner and cast Shockwave. You can deal with this with knockback immunity every time that it comes up, so feel free to just pop your knockback immunity and focus entirely on positioning for the stacks. Make sure your groups are together for the stacks, and you're good to go. The next mechanic is Predatory Avarice. This is a debuff mechanic that gives a random tank and a random DPS a dark blue debuff, signifying that they need to spread away from the rest of the party when it goes off. If they're too near to anybody else, they're going to knock them back and probably kill them. A healer is going to get a stack debuff that looks like a little teardrop or raindrop, so you want to make sure that, just be aware that that's a stack at the end. These aren't immediately going to go off. Instead, first we get Spoken Cataract. Once again, we're going to dodge this as before. And then immediately afterwards, the tank and the DPS targeted with the spread one want to get away while the healer stacks with their party. The stage transitions back to the normal form, and we get Channeling Flow. Everybody's going to get targeted with a slide mechanic. Now, something convenient about this, tanks and healers are going to have all the directions between them, and DPS have all the directions between them, so you can partner up and agree to face a partner of the same style role as yourself. For my group, we have tanks and healers target the D waymark, so they always know where to go, and DPS target the B waymark, so they always know where to go. But there are lots of ways to deal with this, and ways to get more uptime if that's what you're going for. The way these slides work is, unlike an emerald weapon, instead of trying to avoid each other, you need to hit into somebody else, otherwise you just keep sliding to your death. If you hit into somebody else, you guys stop, and as long as you've slid a far enough distance, you take minimal damage and everything's fine. If you did not slide enough, if players were too close together when they slid, it would kill them. So they need to make sure that they're far enough apart, about max melee is good enough. This is followed by a Doubled Impact Tank Buster, and Murky Depths is a raid-wide. We get one more raid-wide Sewage Deluge, make sure to mitigate, and the stage transitions back to the watery version. For this version, the boss is going to start by casting Shockwave at a random corner. Once again, pop knockback immunity, but start heading towards that corner for the next mechanic, which is Kampeos Harma. This is a weird one. 4 players are going to get blue markers above their head, 4 players purple markers above their head. The purple markers have it fairly simple. All they need to do is they're going to get jumped on for a large spread AoE at the end of this cast, so they just need to be spread at intercardinals away from each other. We use the waymarks to assign where they're going to go to. So we get a little clockwise pattern going on with this. The body is going to be dashing across diagonally. So for this to work, we need the blue waymarks, whoever has an odd number, to go directly opposite where the boss starts. They're going to position with 1 in front of 3, and at the previous one, 2 in front of 4. This way, when the boss's body starts dashing between the sides, it's going to hit 1 and not hit 3 on the way. Now, you can ignore purple because they're not doing anything. They're going to stand still and just hit the boss, but focus on what blue has to do because their mechanic's not over. Once the body dashes to 1, it turns around and dashes back to 2, and at this point in time, 1 and 3 are going to swap. This is so that when the boss goes back to 3, it doesn't hit 1 on the way. 2 and 4 are going to do the same thing. They swap when the boss heads to 3, and then the body heads back towards 4, and the mechanic is over. You get a doubled impact shortly after. Deal with this either by sharing it or one tank invulning it. And a Murky Depths raid-wide. Next up is Channeling Overflow. Channeling Overflow is going to give those same slide debuffs that we saw before. Now, 4 of these have a long debuff, about 30 seconds. 4 of them have a shorter debuff, about 15 seconds. There's no visual cue for this, but I'm going to visualize it like this so we can see our short debuff players. Now, the short debuff players, because of the unsafe corner, have only one place they can go to slide without dying. It looks like this. This means they'll have somebody else to slide into, and they've got the full distance to slide. The other 4 players are going to be targeted with a spread mechanic. They just need to get to a safe spot where they won't get hit by the dashes. Corners of the arena work, as do any of the grating near to the unsafe corner. As long as they're spread out and not in the way of a dash, and the dashes are in the right position, everything should go just fine. Immediately afterwards, the long debuff players can now go to where their directional arrow tells them they need to go, while the other players are going to spread. This is followed by a Cataract mechanic. Deal with this the same way that we did before. Predatory Avarice happens when the stage transitions back to its normal one, and just like before, random tank and a random DPS get the dark blue debuffs, and a random healer gets the light blue stack debuff. The boss casts Dissociation, and the head is going to appear on a random side. That's going to, just like normal mode, cleave that entire side, so that side will be unsafe for the next mechanic. But the boss is going to regrow its head while the other head is still out, and cast a Cataract. We need to dodge the head cleave and the Cataract while having the group stacked near to the boss and the other 2 players far out and spread from each other and the group. Make sure you're far enough away that you don't clip with the spread, as the knockback and the damage will likely kill. Next up we have Dissociation again. The head appears on a random side. The boss's head regrows, but this time it casts Sewage Eruption, which is going to be baited AoE puddles underneath all of the players. My recommendation is to start by baiting these on the side where the head is, because the head won't cleave until about the 3rd set of puddles. So stay stacked together to bait them together, and slowly move away from where the head is. The boss will cast Tainted Flood to give you spreads at the end of this. Just wait for the 3rd set of puddles, and then immediately spread to either pre-assigned positions, or you could just YOLO it. There's a standard Coherence here. Tether targets somebody, tank picks it up, the other tank goes in front of the group for a line stack. But there's nothing special or difficult about this one, just be ready for it. And a doubled impact. A lot of damage going in on the tanks here, so watch their health healers. If healers didn't have enough to do, next up is a Murky Depths raid-wide, and then a Sewage Deluge transitioning into our final phase. First mechanic we get while on the grates is Channeling Overflow, and this time it's still going to be the same 8 slide debuffs, still 4 long, 4 short. But while the shorts are positioning, the boss is going to cast Coherence. This tether has to be picked up by the tank with the long debuff. They're the only one that can deal with it. The 3 other players, they don't have spread markers this time, but they need to make sure that they're positioned near enough to the D corner, the one opposite the unsafe corner, so that they can stack with the group. Main tank, or whichever tank has the long debuff, takes this as far away as possible. The other players hide. And then the slides go off. And immediately after this, everybody's going to want to stack, ready for that line stack with the other tank in front of the group. If you've done that part right, the rest of it's fine. Everybody needs to quickly run the long debuff players to the only place they can go to do their slides, and everyone else just finds anywhere to hide that's not in the way of the dashes. Final real mechanic of this fight. There's another Dissociation. The head appears on a side, and we're going to get targeted with Sewage Eruptions again. So to deal with this, have the party stack, preferably on the side that the head's on for the first stack. Remember, the head's not going to cleave until about the third puddle bait, so you can bait the first puddles there, and this gives you a lot more room to bait all 3 puddles before you finally dodge the final mechanic. If you've done this, you're basically home free because everything else is repeated mechanics. You get an Ominous Bubbling, which is a set of healer stacks exactly the same as before. Don't forget to pop Knockback Immunity for the Shockwave. There's another Doubled Impact Tank Buster. And finally, 2 Murky Depth casts and a Sewage Deluge as the Enrage. And that's the fight. Hopefully you manage to kill before that Enrage cast goes off. Let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed or any strategies that I've got I'm mistaken on. And please let me know if you've got any suggestions for future content. Thanks very much, guys.